Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Going Vocal. And I have with me here on the panel Anupam, Hemant, and Vandana. So today we're going to discuss relationships in the modern world and how communication can affect that. So we'll start off with the more advanced thinking that young youth have today with regards to relationships, such as the one known as the polyamorous relationship. So if you look into the world, there's a lot of people who are now talking about polyamorous relationships, and that is where each partner has multiple partners, and they know of all the multiple partners, and they go around, they accept it, all the partners accept it. So there are some sort of boundaries uh, that are involved there. So we'll have to investigate and see how they set their boundaries and how whether this is really functional or not. So Vandana, we'll start off with you. What is your thoughts on the polyamorous relationship and how communication affects polyamorous relationships?
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thanks, Rahul, and thanks, Hemant and Anupam, for having me here. It's a very interesting topic. And so, when you look at, uh, if you have to get to the bottom of this, right? So, there is this one thing that I would like to probably define in terms of how is this. So, I have heard my dad always say that, it's a generation gap. So today we have a more clear picture of the generation gap because uh, what the new generation here we are referring to in this particular podcast is something between the people who are born between 1995 until 2012 or so. So we've classified that as Gen Zs, where now it's become more official. Earlier, they used to call it was used interchangeably, but here now we have a clear definition of what is what do you call people who were born before that and all of this. So and it's very difficult for many people to look at it in a very non-judgmental way because that is how things have transformed. You always, as human beings, we tend to draw that comparison with how it was during our days or things like that, what we are more familiar with. So when it comes to newer thinking processes, people trying to adapt, people trying to become more open about a lot of things, it's very difficult for many people to try and get their head around it. But I'll be very happy to look at it in a very non-judgmental way and see how they see it as well. So I think more relationships today are the social situation of the society around you has a huge bearing on this. How the society has become very open today. They are ready to accept, even as parents or siblings. Earlier on it was a very difficult conversation in the previous generations, like people who are now about 30 or 40 might be able to understand that. How do you even discuss that with your parents, right? You have a boyfriend when you are probably 15 or 16. You have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. How do you go and tell that to your parents? No one had that courage. But today I'm sure maybe a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old is okay with it because to a large extent as parents also they've become very open to listening to the child or to not child, girl or a boy. So to see that what is it you have to share, I'm open to listening to it. So I think that change in the society has brought about a lot of change in the way people see the relationship or discuss the relationship, and also they're open about it. So you have some
Fine.
feelings for someone. It was a very difficult conversation to have with your parents or family or anyone for that matter, but that's not how it is today. Today they can, I broke off with my girlfriend. It is very easy for children today to say that, or the boys today to say that it didn't work out, I broke off. But 10 years before, 20 years ago, that was not the case. So I think communication there has, the entire dynamics has changed. They are open, and open from both sides, from the boys side or
I
the
think
girls side and the parents side as well.
fantastic,
So
fantastic idea, Vandana. So I think one of the most important aspects here is perhaps honesty. As you rightly said, it may be very strange for people who don't live in this particular or who haven't grown up in this particular generation to understand that. But it's more highly likely that there were children who may have grown up seeing parents like that who had multiple relationships and so on and so forth, and decided to become more honest and vocal about it. And therein we got the concept, this particular concept of a polyamorous relationship coming out, where they openly discuss it and go about it and don't have any grudges. So, Hemant, how do you think communication? What do you think is the core thing in communication that is required here if you're in such a kind of a relationship as a polyamorous relationship? What would your opinions be?
I mean, actually, this is something new as far as India is concerned. I'm definitely seeing changes even in Kerala post-COVID. So, uh, both from the parents' side and also, I mean, especially from the parents' side, it is not easy to accept. And as far as these people going after these relationships is also concerned, because relationships, such relationships, it is not easy as you see, because even married people who have been married for many years, uh, many issues crop up because the communication gets broken. So when
True.
you have this type of relationship with multiple partners, each person's character will be different. So hence,
Right.
accordingly, you'll have to fine tune your
Yes,
communication.
I think one of the most important aspects here would probably be setting boundaries. Don't you think so? You'll have to be able to have that communication to say, okay, these are the people that I'm having this kind of a relationship with, and we set boundaries. Don't interfere with these particular boundaries. Don't come into these particular boundaries. So a certain level of distance is absolutely essential for whoever is going around with these particular this format of a relationship, right? Yeah, we'll take it from here and we'll go to the other side of the spectrum now and just investigate the other side of the spectrum, which is codependence. All right, a kind of heavy dependence, emotional dependence on the other partner, and a need for long-term bonding with dependence involved in it, such as the case with I think the lady who sang for the Titanic theme song. What was her name? Uh,
Celine Dion.
Video.
Celine Dion, right. So Celine Dion is reputed for having a codependent relationship on her husband, who she fell in love with when she was 12 years old, and after he passed away, she went through trauma. So this is a very interesting form of relationship. Anupam, how do you think codependence and communication are connected? Do you think codependent? How do you think codependence and polyamorous relationships are different? Which one do you feel is more healthy? So these are three questions for you.
Um, First of all, the communication plays a very important role the way people are handling relationships these days. We have recently seen the case of Abhishek Bachchan and Aishwarya Rai. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's surfaced in the news these days. And see, they have been married, I think, around 6 to 7 years ago, and still they don't feel confident about each other. So I think polyamorous relations is creating a problem over here, and the major problem is people do not have patience. When you tend to be in relationships with many people, you opt to find other options. The way our generations, our parents' generations were, they didn't know each other, but when they committed to each other, they knew that they are going to be their partner for the whole life. So I think any both these issues or any of the options will have its pros and cons, but any of the option that we are choosing will have to be very upfront during the communication. And communication can, what do you say? How do I say? Reduce the bridge between the two people who are in relations. So I feel it becomes important for each one of us, even as a parent, to understand that things are changing. So we have to adapt those things. We have to understand how young people are thinking, what is their way of thinking, and that way we'll have to push ourselves also. Maybe just relax a bit the strict rules that we try to follow during our own ages, we'll have to understand that now things are changing, and that is how we have to go about it. So this is what I feel.
I think a lot of the young people these days want options. They get options in the kind of television channels they have. They get options in multiple products that they want to purchase, but they don't have many options in terms of relationships, and so they must be inventing a lot of new options there. If you look at codependence, I sometimes feel that it can be a form of hell and sometimes also toxic, unlike the one that Anupam described earlier, where it is mm, more healthy because you mentioned commitment, a committed relationship wherein people decide to work on the relationship and to sacrifice certain desires in order to ensure that the relationship goes forward. So, yeah, Vandana, let's have your thoughts on, codependence as well, and what you think in terms of this particular form of relation where one is emotionally completely tied down. It's not the same thing as Anupam was discussing earlier with the committed relationships where people, decide to work on the relationship and, discipline themselves. What is your thoughts basically on codependence?
Uh, See, so it's more like today, if you see, it is at the end of the day, it's about understanding the very basic that there is no such thing as there's no such thing as a bed of roses, right? So, but in today's generation, what people think is like what you rightly mentioned, they have a lot of choices. So, right from a shampoo to a face cream to anything, they have a lot of choices. So, you always tend to switch between each of them. So, you cannot stick on to one. So when you start using one, then the second day you start thinking, oh, why should I not order the other one and use it? So the similar thing is actually translating into relationships. So when you're trying to jump from one to the other, trying to see that, okay, maybe the other one will be better than this, maybe it's greener on the other side. So essentially what is happening is you are ending up in a stage, maybe you're seeing the good part of everything and you're trying to experience everything, you have a lot of exposure, but at the end of the day, why are they ending up with mental health problems? Today's generation is ending up with mental health problems because they cannot stick on to something. They're always they're hurrying things up, they want to fast track everything. But when you're talking of codependence for a long time, I'm not saying that that's free from all, issues, or, there's like what you rightly pointed out, there could be a lot of trauma bonding or a sort of, toxicity in it. But it is only about balancing or, getting into that acceptance mode of, okay, could be this is not all right, this is not all going right in this relationship, but let me at least try to address it, accept it to a large extent and move on, rather than going and getting into a different relationship or jumping into another one and seeing what is better there. So sometimes it could be even jumping from the fire to the frying pan sort of a situation, right? So you might think that this is not right, these things are not right with me or in this relationship, but how sure are you that you're going to find that in a new one? So there's nothing that is all positive. There's nothing that's all roses outside. I'm sure the best of the best relationship. Talk about like Aishwarya Rai and Abhishek Bachchan, or talk about Hrithik Roshan. These are like the best personalities that you can see in Bollywood. Very well educated, beauties, and he was like referred to as Greek god at some point of time. But every relationship faces it. It's not about the appearance. It's not about, but it's about at some point trying to come to terms with what you have, try to find your way out of it, or work your way through it and see what best you can get, rather than going after other options or trying to see happiness or love outside of it. So this is what I think is today's trend in terms of
Right.
not to just stick on to one. Why not I try something else? But it need not be a rewarding experience at the end of the day. You might see multiple people, you might go through multiple situations, and you're probably well educated at the end of it, but are you happy at the bottom of your heart? That is something that the generations of today should see, and address.
Okay, fantastic,
I have a
Vandana.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a
Yes,
question
Anupam.
to the whole panel. What if things are not working good between the two people? should we still consider that let's try, give it a new try, or maybe after multiple attempts also they have tried and things are still not going well? What are the options? Do you think that
So
divorce is the only option? Because we have seen that the percentage of divorces in India, especially, has gone up exponentially if you see it from the past 3 to 4 years. And we see it as a term, as a bad term, divorce. But I feel sometimes if things are not working well between the two, if they have some mental issues and some issues between them which is affecting their health, I guess this is a better option. What do you think? I don't know. Maybe if you can.
personally, what I feel here is that you see, if people are it's not working out, people need to start setting new boundaries between themselves. It's probably not working out because they don't tend to understand each other. They don't tend to have that, what the youth call, vibe with each other. That is basically that common that ability for their behaviors to gel together. So these are some of the reasons that causes people to slowly begin to part ways in terms of their psychology. So generally, before any options like that is explored, like you mentioned, divorce or things like that are explored, people need to start maybe giving a little space to each other, try to discover new boundaries, new ways of communicating, making an effort. So that's where those committed kind of relationships become more important, like where you have the discipline to work on something, you have the discipline to try it, to make the efforts to have an institution like marriage in this particular case, but be brought forward to victory. All right. But in the case of, like we discussed earlier, polyamorous relationships with youth and the new generation, some of them beginning to explore new formats of relationships. You see, maybe not a lot of people are psychologically ready for institution building. All right, as is the case with a committed married relationship. So maybe many of them do not want to take on the efforts of building an institution like marriage, and so they try to explore in other aspects to release uh, feelings of the body. All right, expressions, the needing to express the body much more. If you ask me, I think it depends on what you believe in more or what you really want to work for. You know, it's difficult to judge which one is right and which one is wrong because the human psychology has changed so much over the years. Earlier on, perhaps the woman would be submissive and accept whatever happens. But today's world, this is not the case anymore because we've changed. We don't have people coming across with swords and killing each other and women having to be protected anymore because they become so important to the human species, you see. When people are killing each other, a woman is a very important gender in the human species. So there's a lot of protection that starts happening at that time. But now we don't have such kinds of wars anymore. The weapons have changed, technology has changed. So women now are opening up and want to express themselves much more as well, and are not willing to be submissive, but rather would like to, be on equal terms. So when you have an equal partnership, things become far more difficult. Even in the case of a business, if you go look at a business, if both partners are equally involved, although they might be the best of friends outside the business, once they come into the business, other kinds of issues start popping. Oh, you're not working as much as I'm working. You haven't put in the kind of efforts I've put in, so on and so forth. And so, what was once healthy as a friendship, as a business relationship, today becomes destroyed. All right. So, in that sense, if you look at today's marriages and committed relationships, you have this kind of a problem coming in. So individuals are now beginning to look at other options. Okay, other options. That is one of the things that I've noticed here. And if they're not willing to work on institution building, I feel that perhaps they may try other options as long as they don't end up wanting to kill each other. Well, I think even in the case of marriages, there's been a lot of people who wanted to kill each other in the past, but nevertheless, I think communication plays a crucial role here. And honesty, understanding fair distance, understanding boundaries, respecting boundaries, working on progressing your relationships forward, understanding nothing is a bed of roses, realizing that the emotion known as love need not remain as that passionate form it was in the beginning, but might settle down into something that is That mundane daily routine. Something mundane daily routine is something that you'll have to get used to and work on it, and work on it. So that is something uh, crucial here. So, yeah, I also wanted to ask you guys about your concept of how you felt love, human love between individuals uh, can be maintained, that passionate, that feelings for each other. So I like Anupam did throwing it open to the panel. How do you think that communication can help you retain that passionate experiences that maybe many of you had in the beginning of your romance or your arranged marriage or whatever it is, however you got connected with your spouse or your lover or whatever it is. The initial form, how do you guys feel can be retained over the years?
Yeah, actually, relationship. Uh, if you're getting, supposing you are getting married, as per the Indian method, I would say. So the meaning of love actually changes because when you get married, you are in a different world. Uh, I think it will be more of romance. So the communication keeps changing. The meaning of love over the years keeps changing. So as years go by, the of course the romance will still exist, but there are more other dimensions of love that each partner will be looking into. So maybe more of empathy is required over the years, which may not be there initially.
Right.
Especially yes, especially maybe today it's different because the ladies have also become more. They are more educated. They are more assertive. But if you take about say 30, 35 years ago, it was the man who was more aggressive. So initially, when getting married, probably he was what should I say? He was more one angled thought. He was there, but now the things are so. From my point of view, yes, communication plays an important part in love. It The mode of communication will have to change based on the years that pass by between the relationship between the husband and the wife.
And
Yes.
Vandana, what's your opinion? Do you have any opinions here?
Yes, that's a very good thought, Hemant. And I'm actually not a very big fan of the Western world or the Western way of things. But there's one thing here I would like to, I actually appreciate or I admire in the Western world is that sometimes I often feel towards the Eastern side of the culture, they do not express it as much, right? Sometimes we always undermine the power of expressing love. So it's like it's there, it's given. So what is the big deal about it? Or giving a hug when the husband goes to work, or telling them that I love you. Sometimes I think we often fail to see the power of that because I don't see that happening. At least I've not seen that happen with my parents or my extended family. So because it's there, he's my husband, she's my wife, and it is there. What is there to tell that? What is there to even say that I love you? Oh, these days, you guys tell it more often. But I sometimes feel many relationships have probably fallen apart because people don't give that importance of reiterating that. I mean, like what you mentioned, initially there's a lot of charm and everything is all rosy and nice, and you want to call each other up 15 times when you are at work, or what did you do? Did you eat? Have breakfast? Had coffee? Or whatever. But when you slowly fall into your routine of work and office and children and other things, you might not express it as much. Again, that doesn't mean that it's not there, but sometimes depending on your mental state that you're in, your stress or your other things, it is good, or I would say it is important that we tell each other that I love you, or I missed you today, or how are you doing? Give that call and express that love, which is largely not there, at least not used to be there in the Eastern side of it, the Eastern culture, right? So we
Okay.
take it for granted. We are not very expressive or vocal about our feelings or our expression of love. And today,
Fantastic.
I think a lot of people have started realizing it, or I'm not sure, it could be the social media, it could be, bridging the boundaries of East and West. People have started seeing how things work in the other part of the world, as opposed to being within your place or your village or town that you were confined to earlier on. But definitely see that as a positive, to say that, and sometimes even, coming back from work, I've never seen my mom hug my dad when he comes back from work. But today, I think when you do that, it's a lot relaxing. You've not seen each other for so many, and biologically talking, there's a lot of hormones that play in your mind, releasing that stress. And at least to say that somebody is there back home waiting for me, that doesn't mean that my mom never had that for my dad. Probably she'll show it, like, giving a cup of coffee when he comes back from work. That's fine.
Right.
But they were very, I would say, reluctant, or very conservative in terms of expressing it more physically or verbally. It was sometimes
Right.
through actions. But in some relationships, I always feel that it doesn't hurt if you show that in terms of more openly or more obviously to the other person. It helps.
Yeah,
That's what I
fantastic.
feel.
So Vandana's ideas on expression and regular expression are very good. I do agree with that. I think regularly expressing yourself is something very important. I would also say that the element of surprise and all
Mhm.
the time having surprise involved in your relationships are very important to help build that institution and make sure that you have a more long-lasting relationship. So all mystery and surprise, if you're able to retain them over a long period, you will at all times have a more interesting relationship. And so whenever something is more interesting, people have a large incentive to be around that particular situation. So surprises like all of a sudden planning a vacation without telling your spouse, or maybe, sending a present out of the blue to her office or his office, and, doing all kinds of crazy things every once in a while. Being a little bit crazy might really assist you in, continuing this kind of relationship over an extended period of time, because that in today's world is what is difficult. People see themselves leaving other relationships like friendships, schoolmates who they really loved at a certain point by changing schools, and a lot of other things that they have really, sort of like they might have really adored a teacher, and out of the blue, they have to leave that particular district or state and go to another one. And they keep losing these relationships that even when it comes to an institution like marriage, that becomes something that they're facing with the mindset that they have cultivated through their history, whatever has happened to them. So they are not willing to believe that they can go ahead over in any institution over such a long period of time with someone other than they know, like their parents or whoever it is. All right. So I feel that, but I'll ask Anupam about another kind of relationship, which is the long distance relationship that people talk of these days. That is, you probably get affectionate to somebody maybe over the internet, or you meet them somewhere, share numbers, become pen pals or keyboard pals if you wish to, and out of the blue you start forming kinds of bonds and kinds of emotional kinds of experiences. What do you feel, Anupam, with regards to long distance relationships? Are they functional? Do you think communication is important in them? And what do you think about them, basically?
I've never experienced it, but for me, I think with long distance relationships, it's the only factor. The communication is the only factor, I feel. And
I think so too.
because if you are disconnected, if you are not calling frequently, if you are not having gaps, long gaps between the calls, or maybe if you are not texting frequently, it will be difficult to maintain the relationship. So I feel long distance relationship is for me it's a myth. It cannot be it cannot be taken forward for a very long time unless you are meeting at a frequently, and but because there can be doubts, there can be various issues between the two, You feel see
So could
in
be polyamorous
communication,
long
yes,
distance relationship.
yes, it can be, yes.
Where one
And
partner has
now,
multiple
yeah, exactly. And nowadays
relationships.
it's very difficult because it's very difficult to trust each other in these kind of
Yes,
situations.
yes.
And I feel still, if people are trying to have those kind of relationships, they should be committed to each other, and they have to follow a routine of where they have to keep a note and have a scheduled calls and whatever they want to do. And maybe in a while they should contact or maybe be in touch with each other. Maybe whenever they can travel to each other's spot, they should meet. Otherwise, it will be difficult to maintain. For me, it's kind of a difficult thing to do. Yeah, that
But
can
there
be
have
the.
been known instances of people who have maintained long distance relationships and gone ahead. So generally, I would feel that you see different minds, different psychologies are there with different fingerprints and different
Mhm.
faces, and everybody perhaps has a different way of approach or a different approach towards life. So some people may do well in polyamorous relationships because they simply don't want that. They prefer their body, the feelings of their body to anything else. Some people will do well in committed relationships because they have the self-discipline that is required to keep them going for an extensive period of time. Some people will do well, maybe even in long-distance relationships because they live very lonely lives and are not good at being extroverted, if you'd rather. They have a far more introverted characteristic in the sense that they simply do not meet people, do not talk to people, are shy by nature, and find themselves much more excited when they deal with people without the problems of a physical connection or physically meeting each other. So yes, I'd like to conclude that with this statement. And thank you, guys. It's been a lovely session. I think we will try to explore. There are so many other aspects of relationships, such as toxic relationships and people being, involved in toxic relationships. Certain people enjoy toxic relationships, in fact, and some people don't. I mean, most people don't, but you do have different minds. So yes, it's been a fantastic session, and we will meet for the next one next week. And to all our viewers, if you have enjoyed this session, please do subscribe to our channel. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye bye, guys. Bye bye.
Bye.